that garbage can orbit of Donald Trump. No doubt that he's nervous.
What'd you do?
On Tuesday, April 4th, 2023, Donald Trump entered a Manhattan courtroom and pled not guilty to 34 crimes.
Fucking movie star. You're a fucking movie star. So tick, tick, tick.
Just for a moment, if you may, put yourself in Trump's shoes. Your wife doesn't really care or even turn up on your Mother's Day lunch. You have a load of sycophants who are making it a regular public appearance to stand in the back of the shadows as you read out your written statement before you go into court. And you've got how many felonies against you? Oh yeah, added to that, you can't find a decent lawyer. Most people would be bricking it. Former guy, he looks close to tears.
Have not come close to proving fraud or that any fraud has taken place. There's no fraud here. There's no crime here. This is 4 weeks of keeping me from not campaigning. Jonathan Turley, can't imagine any competent lawyer would not be embarrassed by what has happened in this courtroom. This day is truly going to go down as a day of infamy for the New York legal system, which is true. The whole world is laughing now at the New York weaponized legal system. Watching this unfold in that courtroom as a lawyer is really deeply disturbing. They keep on referring to these documents. The documents don't move the ball. The documents show that the NDA and a payment that is not in dispute, this is Jonathan Turley. They're not unlawful, and as a federal campaign contribution, there is absolutely no problem. There's no problem here. You know, the FEC wrote this off. FEC, the Elections Commission, Federal Elections Commission, they looked at this years ago, and they took a pass. They said there's no problem here. Tim Scott, objective is to keep Trump off the campaign trail. That's all they're trying to do, keep him off the campaign trail. Here's the New York Times that just came out a little while ago, where we're leading in every state, the 5 key states, we're leading very substantially, I might add. So it's really a very sad day for the country. It's sad for New York. I mean, New York, that a judge who's highly conflicted at a level that nobody's seen before can possibly, just think of it, and you should go out and check it out. But we have a corrupt judge, and we have a judge who's highly conflicted, and he's keeping me from campaigning. He's an appointed New York judge. He's appointed. You know who appointed him? Democrat politicians. He's appointed. He's a corrupt judge, and he's a conflicted judge, and he ought to let us go out and campaign and get rid of this scam. Every single legal analyst, even CNN, even MSDNC, they're saying there's no case here. Thank you very much.
Tommy Tuberville. Sorry, I can't take that guy serious. Do you need to see him slipping down the airline or the airline steps? Back to serious situations. One of the things whenever you have a big news story is you get talking heads. 9 times out of 10 are not particularly interested in what they've got to say because you can tell they're just there for a check. However, this former retired judge who was on CNN, spot on the money.
They seem to me to be riveted by this testimony. This is so crucial because one of the main goals for the prosecution that Michael Cohen has is to establish a motive and intent directly on Donald Trump that would cause him to take the steps that ultimately led to the $130,000 payment and be involved and be knowledgeable about it. So to me, by far, Wolf, that was the most compelling testimony of the day.
So far he's been a strong witness for the prosecution. Is that your bottom line?
Absolutely. He comes across poised, cool, calm, and collected. When I saw the Trump team,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say at the break, Trump came in with a huge entourage today, about 23 individuals. including Senator J.V. Vance, Senator Tom Tuberville, when they left at the break at about 11:30, that was one somber-looking group. That was my eye.
I'm not an expert here, but just on the outside looking in, does part of this smell and feel like a money laundering exercise that was going on? It just seems very weird that Michael Cohen would get $130,000 to pass on to a porn star without former guy having any clue or really being concerned about it. He doesn't strike me as somebody who can just say, oh, here's $130K to my lawyer, blink, not a problem. There is something.
Of quote-unquote dirty money to start with. This was all legitimately earned clean money, so they can't charge anyone with money laundering, but they're trying it in the same way. And, you know, back to this point about the bankers, you know, this never would have gotten through a bank because banks number one, wouldn't have agreed to it in the first place on the face of it, but they will turn down what's called a pass-through account. They will not open an account for you to put money in for it to go out. They make no money off of it, and it's a huge money laundering risk. They filed a suspicious activity report. We know that there were a lot of indicia of a money laundering case here, and they're prosecuting it almost like it is that. And so I think at the end of the day, these invoices are going to come in to prove the falsity. And now Cohen is being brought in to show Trump's direction of it.
Why isn't it bank fraud if you're getting a mortgage with false statements as to, I guess, if you're putting up the money, you're lying about the purpose, but it's okay as long as you're putting up real money?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It wasn't established really on the direct examination that it was going to be a pass-through account. They said it's an LLC. It is an LLC. On the face of it, there's nothing actually incorrect about what Michael Cohen was saying to the banker. It was just that it had to be done quickly. We're starting a new LLC. It wasn't a lie as much as an omission. And remember, we're in state court as opposed to federal court, which really is, it's not to say that the Manhattan DA's office doesn't bring bank fraud cases. They do all the time. But I think this is a much cleaner case to bring it the way they did. And they obviously didn't want to get into some of the extraneous topics. For example, there are tax issues, there's banking issues, and I think they're trying to bring a pretty sprawling case and make it as narrow as possible.
They are keeping this pretty tight, which makes it really interesting to me, Danny, that they're going into the fact, and I saw you chuckle a little bit, but the idea of creating an invoice for a golf membership or an event. But of course, if you want to remove the Trump name, that doesn't work. Why is all this here?
The sheer hijinks of all of these transactions is really helpful to the prosecution because it's almost Keystone Cops-like, the way these people did business. It's bizarre. And to me, something that really jumps out at me is just how hard Michael Cohen really tried to push this to after the election. And the implication is clear. They were going to stiff her after they got past the election and let her do whatever, which, by the way, begs the question, well, if you weren't worried about it after the election, why not just pay her directly, get into a settlement agreement, and then whatever happens, if it gets traced back to you after the election, so be it. You're certainly not in this position, but they're just too clever for themselves with all of these shenanigans. I mean, it's just remarkable, and I think it helps the prosecution because in many ways, it's just so clumsy. I mean, you really couldn't make up a document like that in a movie where you actually have people handwriting on it. Here's double it up for taxes. I mean, it literally says ×2 for taxes.
Well, it sort of fits with the persona of Michael Cohen. He was not exactly a white shoe lawyer.
Well, this is Weisselberg.
Right, it's Weisselberg.
Well, Weisselberg is.
But even in
it's
money
Michael
laundering,
Cohen and Weisselberg. I mean, these are their conversations about, well, we can do this, but it's a Trump golf course, so that doesn't.
Well, I think if you're talking about hijinks and shenanigans, which I love your use of descriptive words, if I may say, Danny, it's also maybe relatable, or it gives it more credibility when you hear somebody saying, well, I've got 4 prep school tuitions and I've got summer camp. So
I don't know about the prep school business.
Well, prep school costs a lot of money. 70 grand a pop in some schools here in the city. Hey, let me ask about the defense. Why haven't we seen a lot of objections?
That is a question for the ages. There have been many times where I think they could have objected. I mean, even little things. And look, when it comes to the prosecution asking leading questions on direct, that's kind of a judgment call. You don't want to appear to be too that you're hiding anything by objecting too much. There's certainly a strategy there that the more you object, the jury might see you as having something to hide. But that being said, I think I can fairly say that even the judge himself has opined that there aren't enough objections from defense counsel because he said as much. So it's really tough for me to criticize their style of not objecting. But when you don't object, you don't preserve the issue for appeal. And arguably, going back to that Stormy issue, which to me represents Stormy Daniels' testimony represents really the first and only major appealable issue. A lot of that wasn't objected to. So you have to wonder, to what degree has this been waived on appeal? So, yeah, I mean, not a lot of objections, not sure what the strategy is. I mean, these are all able counsel at the defense table. I am surprised they haven't objected more.
I want to bring in retired New York State Supreme Court Judge Jill Konviser, who has known Judge Juan Merchan for 15 years. It's good to see you. And I wonder what you make of this. There's only been really a handful of objections. I mean, the sidebars that we were seeing on some days over and over and over again have not been present. What do you think is going on?
Well, I think defense lawyers have to be careful not to alienate a jury. And one of the ways that they alienate a jury if they keep popping up and jumping on their feet and objecting and getting sustained objections. I agree with your panelists who said the only issue so far really has been some of the information that was not objected to earlier by Stormy Daniels. That created an issue. But objections are strategic, and judges do not like to get involved in a defense posture or a prosecutor's way of trying their case. They want them to try their cases. They know better than the judge in terms of what they need. So the fact that they are not objecting is strategic, I would think. It is rare for an appellate court to say that a case gets reversed on an evidentiary issue like failing to object. Why they're not, I can't guess. They're going to have free reign on cross-examination whether they object or not, but I suspect they're trying not to alienate the jury.
Well, we certainly saw the surprise from Judge Merchan during the whole Stormy Daniels and he testimony, and he raised some very specific questions about, for example, why you wouldn't object to the conversation about the use of a condom. So how does Judge Merchan approach what we do expect to be very different on cross-examination than we've seen on direct for Michael Cohen?
Well, how the judge should stand down on cross-examination, right? Cross-examination is one way to get at the truth. If you're in my courtroom and you're a defense lawyer, as long as your question is lawful, I'm going to let you ask it. I expect Judge Merchan will do the same thing. There are no rules. Sometimes you heard actually early on in this case, a prosecutor argue it's beyond the scope of the direct examination. That is an objection I would never agree with. Defense lawyers can do or say or ask any question they like so long as it is a lawful question.
Even if there's a very intense back and forth as a judge, you just got to let it go.
Well, you don't have to let it go. It's a matter of personality also. And if it gets to the point where a witness is being torn down inappropriately, then a judge can certainly say, cool it, but it is the tone that he or she may decide is inappropriate, but not the question itself, unless it's a lawless question.
Just possible that he went rogue. Or is it a situation, the leaf is never far from the branch? Sorry, it isn't. The water is not normally that far from the river, the stream, or the tap. Did this tell me straight? Comment section, where do you feel and think? Is Trump guilty? It's just a yes or a no. If you think yes, press the like button. If you think no, press dislike. That's the way we're going to do it.
Well, I'm going to start with the prosecutors themselves, because what they recognized, and you all have already discussed in the previous segment, is that they needed to make sure the juries heard all the corroboration before they heard from Michael Cohen. And so that when Michael Cohen took the stand, they would be able to hear the things that he is saying are things that others too are saying. And that's important because he has been consistent in those regards. And that goes back to what you just played when he said, Trump told me to do it. It was about the campaign and the election. I did it. And so I think that really goes to the core of also that clip you played, that Alvin Bragg and his team are responsible for trying to convince the jury is true, which is exactly what was motivating Donald Trump, what he knew. And believe Michael Cohen, even though he hasn't always told the truth, because he's told the truth about this. And from that aspect, I'd say Michael Cohen's been a good witness from all that we have heard, and the prosecutors have done a good job making sure he was well corroborated before he sat in there.